This is Perek Gimel, Mishna Yud Aleph. This is the third parak of Pirkei Avot, Mishna Yud Aleph. The Mishnah states, Rabbi Eliezer HaModai Omer. Rabbi Eliezer, the Modai, most people say it means he's from the city of Modi'in, says. So he's going to give us a list of 5 sins where one will lose their share in the world to come. What's interesting about this list in Mishnah Yud Aleph is that some of the things he lists don't really seem so bad. So it's going to be our job to figure out what exactly is the terrible sin that's being performed, what's so bad about these 5 things. So he begins. Rabbi Eliezer HaModai Omer HaMechalel et HaKadshim. One who is mechalel the kadshim, one who desecrates holy objects, objects of holiness. There's 2 interpretations of this. Does it mean he desecrates actual hekdesh, actual things that were given to the Beit HaMikdash? Again, the word chilul is to take something from an elevated state and to make it into a lesser state, like chilul Hashem versus kiddush Hashem. Kodesh is something holy, and chil is desecration. So he desecrates holy things, whether it's things that were dedicated to the Beit HaMikdash, or not eating korbanot, or it's more of a general idea that he's mechalel, he desecrates holy ideas or holy concepts. Hamevazeh, number 2, hamevazeh et hamoadot, someone who mevazeh means he disgraces the festivals. So what are moadot? So moadot are festivals, but the question is, what does it mean he's mevazeh? Really, it should have used the word chilul, because if he's really desecrating a holiday, the correct verb would be that he desecrates the holiday. But here, mevazeh means to disgrace. So most of the commentators explain that this means it's actually talking about Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of Pesach and Sukkot, the days where there's less of a degree of severity in terms of what actions you could do. And what it's saying is people don't treat these days properly. They treat them like any other day. So these days are holy, these intermediate days, but people go to work, they don't wear the appropriate clothing, they don't drink a festive meal, they don't treat it properly. So that's what it means. They're mevazeh et hamodot. So what is the connection between these 2, the first 2, mechalel et hakadshim and mevazeh et hamodot? So the connection is simple, that it's someone who would take something that's holy and make it profane. He treats something that doesn't seem to be holy, meaning Chol HaMoed doesn't necessarily have all the inherent ideas of holiness that a regular Yom Tov does, and a korban or something that's dedicated to the Beit HaMikdash, or even, let's say, a holy space like a shul, a mikdash ma'at. Let's say someone takes a shul and treats it like non-appropriately, treats it with not the respect it deserves. So these are people who are diminishing holiness with something that's not necessarily innately holy, but was given holiness or should be given holiness. So that's what he's saying is something that's so terrible that you lose your place in the world to come. Then he continues, number 3, hamalbim pnei chaveiro barabim, someone who literally whitens his friend's face in public. So the Gemara in Baba Metzia explains, what is this talking about? When you make fun of someone, the Gemara says the first thing that happens physiologically is that your face turns red, and then it turns white. So the Gemara explains what it means is because when you're embarrassed, the blood rushes to your face, and then immediately afterwards your face becomes white. So the Gemara goes on to say, so because they made you red, they made you bleed almost, and then they made you white, it's as if they killed you. The Gemara likens embarrassing your friend in public to basically being as if you murdered them, because that's what it looks like it's happening. They become red, there's a rush of blood, and then they're white, which looks like a corpse. It's interesting to note that the word that the Mishnah use is chaveiro, your friend. It doesn't say hamalbim pnei isha or ish or isha. It says chaveiro. It's talking about your friend. So some people point out that what's interesting is that he's talking specifically about someone who embarrasses their own friend, because you might feel, oh, we're just joking around, we're just playing around, and that's not really embarrassing him. But really, even for your friends who you think will be able to, like, let's say, take the joke or not be embarrassed, even that is considered under the prohibition of Malbim Pnei Chaveru Barabim. The next one is Hameithir Brito Shel Avram Havinu Alav HaSholom, someone who removes or nullifies the circumcision, the brit, literally the covenant of Avram Avinu, but this is a reference to the Brit Milah. What this means is it's either someone who neglects to have a Brit Milah and they don't think that it's important or significant, or it means Meifir Brito Shel Avram Avinu Alav HaSholom means either it's they neglect to have a Brit Milah, or it means they're actually just remove it. They physically remove it. This is something that people used to do, that after they had a Brit Milah and they don't want people to know they're Jewish, what they'll do is they'll physically try to remove the Brit Milah by having either surgery done or something happen to them physically that they can remove their Brit Milah. So obviously this is bad because the Brit Milah is a very important mitzvah. It's one of the mitzvot that you get karet for if you don't do. In addition, it's the sign on our bodies that we're Jewish. It's something that stays with us. It's the first mitzvah a person does, a male does when they come into the world, so that's why it's really bad. The fifth and final thing is Hamagala Panim Batorah Shelo Kahalacha, someone who reveals secrets of the Torah not according to their correct way. Meaning, Megala means to reveal, Panim are faces literally, and the Torah, not Halacha means not correctly. So, most of the commentators explain this means it's someone who either mistranslates or misrepresents the Halacha in public. Well, it's either by mistake out of ignorance, or they are just doing it to mock and make fun. So both of those things are really bad because you're doing this in public, you're doing it not according to the halacha, you're going to turn people the wrong way and to make mistakes. So that's why it's a really big deal. But he concludes, so Rav Elazar Mudai continues, Afal pi sheyesh b'yado Torah umasim tovim, even though this individual is a learned individual and has done good deeds, he still does not have a portion in the world to come. So, I guess when you finish this list of 5, what is so bad about these 5 things? So, the commentators explain that while most sins a person does are rooted in at least some element of ta'ava, of lust, or there's some pleasure involved, these really are theological issues someone has. Whether it's denying the validity of holiness in the world, or embarrassing man, which is basically you're not acknowledging his value and his worth, or you're just mocking and make fun of the Torah, or you're trying to get rid of a very important mitzvah. So these things are really very rooted in a theological discussion, and you can even look at the verbs that are used. Mechalel, mevazeh, malbib, meifir, and megaleh are verbs that kind of connote that you're not getting any pleasure, just things are happening. So that's the idea in this Mishnah. That's why these 5 things, while they're not necessarily, you wouldn't imagine them to be the worst sins, the Rabbi Elazar Modai explains that that's why these 5 things person who violates these 5 things doesn't merit a place in the world to come. Mishnah Yud Bet. This is a short one. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Rabbi Yishmael said, Havikal la rosh v'noach tishchoret v'mekabel et kol adam b'simcha, which he teaches us different. Rabbi Yishmael teaches us different behavior and behavior and actions that based on the situation that's involved. So kal la rosh, havikal la rosh means you should be swift or quick for a rosh, someone who's on charge of you or your superior. Meaning one should act quickly to serve a senior, a superior, whether it's an elder or a communal leader. The assumption here in this entire Mishnah, and this specifically, is that there's a hierarchy in life. There are leaders, there are followers, and everyone has to know their place. So we know in Judaism that the leaders are usually the learned individuals or the communal leaders who have taken upon themselves this responsibility. So the Mishnah is saying, Havikal la rosh, one should be quick or swift to help the communal leaders. Noach le tishchoret, you should be noach, like menucha. You should be slow or careful to the young. Tishchoret means the young people, because shachor means black hair. So the assumption being that old people have white hair, young people have black hair. So as I said, old people have white hair, young people have black hair. So noach l'tishchora, you should be slow or careful when dealing with young people. Whether it's you should teach them with you should deal with them, calmly, or you don't really have an obligation to listen to people below you, but you should know how to treat them carefully and with respect, and don't be off the handle with them. Having makabel, it's kol adam. And one should greet every individual with simcha, with happiness. So what's interesting is that one of the commentators explains that this is a three-tiered approach to life, that there are people above you, people below you, and your equals. So the commentator explains, if you treat the people above you, your elders, with respect, they'll treat you like a child. If you treat the people below you the right way, they'll treat you like a father. And if you treat other people, individuals, with happiness, meaning the correct way, you treat them correctly, they'll treat you like a friend. And with that, you can really live your life knowing your place and knowing different people, and you'll be able to live a productive life, a socially adept life, where you have a different hierarchy, but everyone knows their place and everyone treats you correctly. Mishna Yud Gimel. This is a statement of famous Rabbi Akiva, and there are a couple of Mishnah that will come from Rabbi Akiva now. Rabbi Akiva, the famous sage who was murdered by the Roman persecution after teaching Torah to the Jewish people. Rabbi Akiva, probably one of the most famous, sages of the Gemara, of the Mishnah. He was one of the most famous Tanaim. He, started learning late in life, but he became an incredible scholar, and he has numerous statements now in the Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot. So Rabbi Akiva Omer, Mishnah Yud Gimel, Schok v'kal rosh margilin le'erva. Someone here, let me just preface this. What he's going to try to do is help one from avoiding sin. So he's going to give two traits that lead to sin, and then list 4 fences or barriers to help from getting to sin. So again, he's going to start by listing 2 things that a person should limit in their life, 2 qualities or characteristics that he feels lead directly to sin, and then he's going to give you 4 barriers to help a person stay on the straight and narrow. So he says, Schok v'kal rosh margilin le'erva. Schok v'kal rosh margilin le'erva, which means jest and levity lead a person to sexual immorality, or accustom someone to having sexual immorality. He's saying that it's very important for a person in their lives to be serious, because if you're serious and you treat people correctly and you don't joke around with people, if you joke around with everyone, you always want to have a good time. So that type of person is always looking for a good time, and he's never serious about moments that should be serious and taking things the right way. So Rabbi Akiva is concerned that eventually you might come to act inappropriately. So that's what he advises people, to keep a boundary on your own control, your emotional and physical controls. And he says if you keep a certain seriousness about yourself, you won't come to, you might be less inclined to erva, to sexual impropriety. Then he says, Masoret siag leTorah, the tradition of the oral Torah is a fence for the Torah. This actually is a difficult concept, but we'll just take the classic interpretation. Means the Masorah, the rabbinic traditions, help explain and reinforce the Torah, and without the Masorah, the Torah Shebiktav would be almost totally impossible to translate. So therefore, he explains that the Masorah is really needed, is a siag to make the Torah make sense. Ma'asrot siag le'osher. Maaser, which means giving a tenth or tithing or giving charity, we'll just say, is a siag for osher, is a fence for wealth. While one imagines that giving wealth diminishes a person's, giving their wealth diminishes a person's wealth, Rabbi Akiva is pointing out that the Torah promises an individual that if he gives charity, he actually will be promised wealth. Nidarim siag leprishut. Vows and oaths are a fence for abstinence, meaning in order to abstain from the forbidden things, one should begin by limiting permitted things, or forbidding himself from doing the permitted, and then you'll be able to block off those things that are forbidden. For example, let's say you have an inclination to eat non-kosher food. So what do you, so you say to yourself, I don't want to walk into McDonald's because if I walk into McDonald's, I'll eat non-kosher. Because the forbidden act is eating a non-kosher sandwich, a hamburger. But saying I'll make a fence around it by saying I won't even walk into a store, which is permitted in some contexts, or I won't even walk down this block that has a McDonald's because I'm concerned that I'll walk in. So that would be a good example. Or let's say you always get angry at someone. So you're always getting angry at this individual when they, they mess up your notes or mess up your papers. So what do? You don't lend them your paper. It's permitted to lend them your paper, but you say I won't lend them my papers because I know that eventually something bad can happen. Then he concludes, Siag lechachma shtika. And it's interesting to note that this one is written in a different format. It's Siag lechachma shtika as opposed to shtika siag lechachma, which the commentators point out is revealing that he assumes this is much more significant, that the siag for chachma, the only way to get chachma, to get wisdom, the only way to acquire wisdom is to have shtika, silence. Meaning, in order for a person to become smarter, they have to be quiet and listen. So these are Rabbi Akiva's pieces of advice. Then he goes on, and this is a longer Mishnah, Mishnah Yedalad, V'hu haya omer, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Beloved is man again in general. We're going to talk about the different uses of expressions of man versus Adam versus Yisrael, but here it's beloved is man who was created in the image of God. That while we're not similar to God physically, we have certain qualities or traits or attributes that are like God. For example, we usually say, just as God is compassionate, we should be compassionate. God is merciful, we should be merciful. But in addition, we're the only physical being that can communicate in a constructive way. We can attribute things, have different spiritual realms. We can look beyond what's right in front of us. That's something unique to man and God. So, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Beloved is man that was created in the image of God. Chiba Yiteiru Nodat Lo Shenivra B'Tselem. An additional or a greater love was given to man, that God informed man that he was created in this divine image. As it says, meaning in the Torah, it records after the Mabul, after the flood, God informed Noach, the father of all man, after the flood, he informed him, Ki b'tselem Elokim asa et ha'adam. Because with the image of God, I created man. So God informed man that he had this trait of being having these divinely attributes to us. So what's interesting about this is that the Mishnah is assuming it's greater. It's a more important aspect of God not only creating us in His image, but also going ahead and informing us is an interesting added level of love that he's saying. The next idea Rabbi Akiva shares is Chavivin Yisrael Sheniknu Banim Lamako. So while the last statements of Rabbi Akiva were about man in general, this statement is more specific about Yisrael, the Jewish people. So beloved are the Jewish people that God calls them His children. That Makom, God calls the Jews His children. And then once again, same format. Chiba Yiteira Nodat Lahem. Greater love was, or this, a greater element of love was shown to them, because God informed the Jewish people that you are my children. So not only was it a great love that God called the Jewish people his children, but that he went ahead also and informed them. Shenemar banim atem lashem lokechem. You are my children. God told the Jewish people, you are my children. I treat you differently than the rest of the nations of the world. Whether you want to call this chosenness or you want to call this electiveness, God actually went ahead and chose the Jewish people as his nation, his children. Then it goes on, Chavivin Yisrael Shenatan Lahem Kli Chemda. Beloved is the Jewish people that God gave him this Kli Chemda. Kli Chemda means his desirable utensils, meaning God went ahead, not only did he make them his children, not only did he tell them that you're his children, but he also went ahead and gave them something that he loved. Chiba Yitera Nodat Lahem Shenatan Lahem Kli Chemda Shebo Nivra Ha'olam. a greater level of love was not only that God called us his children, and then told us that we're his children, and gave us the Torah, but he also told us, I'm giving you something that's very special to me, and this is something that's special, shenivra bo olam, that the world was created with it. Meaning, God says, I'm giving you a very special thing, you should be careful, and you should understand that this is the thing that I created the world with. Shenemar, as it says in Mishlei, in the book of Mishlei, Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu. For I have given you a good teaching, do not forsake my Torah. As it says, I'm giving you this amazing thing, this Torah, and you should know that this is my special thing. Please never leave it. So again, this Mishna of Rabbi Akiva is telling us about the high quality and these incredible elements of man, that not only all mankind was special because they were created in God's image, but the Jewish people have a greater love, and some commentators say that they're intertwined. The love that the Jewish people have, Rabbi Akiva is saying, we're called banim, and then we were given this incredible utensil that God created the world with, this special thing. We're only entitled to have this special quality of being the sons of God if we keep his kli chemda, his desirable utensils, and respect it and treat it properly. The last Mishnah on the page, but not in the Perek, is Mishnah Tetvav, Hakol Safui, Varashut Netuna, V'tov Ha'olam Nidon. This actually Mishnah is short, but it's not so simple. Again, it's there's no introduction. It doesn't say Rabbi Akiva Omer, so most people assume that this Mishnah is a connection to the one above. So again, Hakol Tzafui, everything is known. Varashut Netuna, permission is granted. U'b'tov Ha'olam Nidon, and the world is judged with goodness. And the last line is V'achol Lefi Rov Hamaseh. Yet everything is, all goodness is judged in accordance yet everything is in accordance with the abundance of good deeds. So again, this is it's a very theological and philosophical Mishnah. Hakol Tzafui, everything is known. Who is everything known to? Everything is known to God. Meaning everything, what you do in public, what you do in private, these are all known to God. Even in our innermost thoughts, some people say, our innermost sanctums of our room, places we think we can hide from God, we're assuming here in the Mishnah, the Rebbe Akiva is telling us, Hakol Tzafui, everything is known. Harashut Natuna, yet still, even though God knows everything, even what we're thinking or what we're going to do, he still gives us the ability to choose right from wrong, which we call Bechira Chavshit, Harashut Natuna, and he doesn't interfere or stop what we're doing if we're doing wrong, if we're doing right, in order to give us the ability to do the right thing. And because of this, that we're given the ability to choose right from wrong, ubatov ha'olam nidon, and because of this choice, where we get to do right from wrong, the world is judged with goodness. That even though God knows everything, and he knows what's going to happen, and if I was God, I'd be depressed, because you could see man can constantly be making the same mistakes, yet still he judges it with kindness, he does it correctly, and he does it with a certain amount of justice. And then the last part of the Mishnah is V'achol lefi rov hamaseh, and all is in accordance with the abundance of deeds. That even though everyone is judged with mercy, how much mercy depends on how we've acted our entire lives. So again, it's interesting to note that while God knows everything, this is what he's assuming, and he gives us the ability to make choices, and even though he knows what we're going to choose, he still allows us to, he still judges us fairly and doesn't, if I knew someone was going to make a mistake all over and over again, usually you judge people different, but God doesn't. But he explains that how well he judges us is based on how well we've acted in our entire life. So this concludes Mishnah Yud Aleph through Tet Vav in the third parak of Pirkei Avot.